Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Absolutely delighted to be here today. And what I'll do is, over the course of next half an hour, share with you my thoughts. And let me first start with the preface that in my career spanning a few decades, I've had the opportunity to work in different functions: sales, marketing, supply chain, mergers and acquisition, finance. And looking back, there is one function I wish I had a chance to work hands-on, and that was HR. So I'll start with that preface. But as a leader, as a CEO, I think one of the areas where I spend the maximum amount of time is on people. So while I may not be one of you when it comes to being a HR professional, I think HR as a function is very dear to me. Just to give you my introduction, I am a quintessential Mumbai boy. I grew up in Colaba and in a classical Indian middle-class family where the values of hard work, education, integrity, I think that's what shaped me. My father used to work for Reserve Bank, and somewhere down the road, the most beautiful woman in the country decided to marry me. And we have got two fabulous daughters, Naina and Roshni. They are twins. They do us proud. They are graduates of Harvard, MIT, and Cornell. And for the last 27 years, I worked for this fabulous corporation called Unilever. And I've had the great opportunity to work around different parts of the world. And for the last 18 years, I had the opportunity to lead businesses in different parts of the year. Now, moving on from my career to the company that I work for, at the end of the day, I can't be talking about HR if I can't talk about business first. So, India's largest FMCG company, just to give you a perspective of HUL a little bit more. Yeah, to be very precise, about 98% of the households use one or more of our brands. And we are feverishly hunting for the balance 2%. अगर उनमें से कोई आप यहाँ बैठे हैं तो मुझे बताइएगा. I would like to do a bit of selling for you after this presentation. We manufacture and sell about 45 billion units every year. And our brands are available in over 8 million stores. We've been a dream employer for over 10 years. Forbes rates us as the 8th most innovative company in the world and number 1 in India. And when you look at the 8th most innovative, the balance 7 are the usual suspects, the Teslas, the Googles, etc. So it's very heartening to see a company which is not in the tech space still being looked at as one of the most innovative. And of course, our brands are household names, one of the most trusted brands that we have a stable of across the country. Now, we are a publicly listed company, and over the last few years, we have very clearly beaten all the index, the FMCG index, or the BSE index, NSE index, and a market cap which was 17 billion 6 years back is now crossed 60 billion. And I hope some of you have invested in HUL stock. If you haven't, it's never too late. Okay, our drivers of value creation are very clear. We have a fabulous business model. Our return on capital employed is over 100%. We are the 4th most valuable company in the country. But if you look at it from a manufacturing company perspective, you will struggle to find a company which has a ROCE of over 100% consistently. We look at market-beating growths so that we have competitive growth. And in last 32 out of the 33 quarters, we have improved our margins. The only quarter was demonetization. There also we could have increased our margin, but we rather invested behind our brands than just look at setting a record. We are close to 38,000 crore. But the interesting bit is, in the last 6 years, the delta turnover that we have added is more than the absolute turnover of our nearest competitor. So that to an extent indicates to you the leadership we have in the FMCG industry. Here is a strategy on a page, very simple. Yeah, it's about strengthening the core, about creating categories of the future, driving premiumization, generating fuel for investing behind the brands, executing brilliantly, structure, de-averaging India, looking at it from a lens of winning in many Indias, nimble and empowered teams, experimentation, owner's mindset, last mile obsession, diverse and inclusive. That's the culture we are building. And of course, in terms of making the organization future fit, our entire agenda under reimagining HUL, which is harnessing data and technology. For us, our sustainability is our differentiator. Yeah, we have a very clear purpose. How do we reduce our environment footprints while enhancing our social impact? And it's done with scale, making a difference to our countrymen. Talent, technology, and transformation. I think Sanjay set the context brilliantly today. The way the country is changing, the way the expectations are changing, and the key issues which confront us. Now, if you look at HR as a function, has also evolved over the years. There were days, during the days when we were a licensed Raj control environment economy, where the entire function of HR was essentially what used to be called as personnel, which was looking after industrial relations, ensuring that there is harmony. Then it was in the 90s when India started to open up, and we started to open up to global competitors, to the best practices. The best consulting firms came to India, and then also that was the beginning or the advent of the services industry in the country. And that's where the war of talent started. And gradually you would have seen HR, which used to be a back office kind of a cost unit, transform itself, and now it has become a key participant on the top table. I think there would be no critical decisions that I would be taking as a CEO without my CFO and my CHRO being together with me. So they have become an important part of the business, and I think it becomes even more important as we go along, because the way the technology is going to shape the organizations and the way it will impact the talent, I think the role of HR is going to be significantly enhanced and become more important. Now, there are various factors which are going to impact the business environment. But if I have to pick up 4 of them, which is going to have a massive impact business in our country, first is, of course, the impact of tech and data. The second is about changing the talent landscape. Then, of course, the deep socioeconomic challenges and the rising environmental challenges. So let me start first by digital. As HUL, we started a journey of reimagining HUL about 3-4 years back. The entire idea was that historically we are a company which is very good at what would classically be called as mass marketing, where we leverage scale, where we get consumer insights, where we develop prototypes, test them in the different factories that we have, then use our distribution muscle to place them on the shelf, then have massive communication as 30-second TVCs, what I would call as spray and pray, hoping that someone would reach the audience, and in the process, deliver products which create value at low cost, which would classically be called as mass marketing. Now, the world of data and technology is putting that business model on its head. And we are on a journey where we are moving from mass marketing to massive customization, and it wouldn't be wrong for us to start visualizing a day of hyper-personalization. Today, at the same time, we are able to have different creatives for different cohorts beamed at the same time. This is just the start. I would clearly see a day when we would have different mixes, personalized to your genome, being delivered to you to meet your specific need. That's the kind of journey that we are on. Now, in that sense, is technology. Many times we feel that it may not have as much impact on my industry as it may have on others. But I think that's a fallacy. Tech is going to be all pervasive. It's going to impact every industry. For some, it may be a bit slow. For some, it may be very rapid. But I think you can't be like a frog in a boiling water, that before you char yourself to death. I think it's important to lead the disruption, then be swamped by disruption. The other is talent. Of course, in a few years' time, India is going to have the largest pool of working population. And as Sanjay rightly alluded to, the biggest challenge that we have as a country is creating source of livelihood for about 1 million youth every month. Now just think of it. Today, what attracts foreign investors to India is 1.3 billion market. Now this demographic dividend could become a drag if we aren't able to create livelihoods. The other important bit is the young generation are very different from ours. A question that might come to you is, every generation is different. Of course. You know, when we were growing up, we used to feel that everyone over the age of 30 is antiquated, right? Now, well, the difference today is that the generation which is coming up now is tech native. So they have been groomed in a very different environment, where access to technology, where flatter world, where disdain for hierarchy and bureaucracy is something which is ingrained in them. So you have to take into cognizance that the practices and the culture which helped the organizations in the past are not going to help the organizations in the future. So that has to be very clearly accepted. And what is a culture? Culture is nothing but behavior at scale. Now, if you're going to have an organization which doesn't respect authority and it believes in an ability to express themselves as freely as possible, you can't bottle them up. If you do that, you will never be able to get the best out of them. So you have to recognize that the talent is going to be very different. They would be more inclusive, more participative, ease at collaborating than the generation before them. The challenge in India. You know, when we were growing up, the economy was at best growing at 3.5%, the famous Hindu rate of growth. The population was growing at 1.5%, 2%. The per capita growth was just about 1.5%. Today, when the GDP growth rate comes down to 5%, it is as if, hey man, the earth has opened up underneath us. The entire country falls into a pall of gloom. Ki yaar, kya ho gaya hai? We were meant to grow at 7-8% and now we have reached 5%. I can tell you, when we were growing up, 5% looked distant and something which was untouchable. So country has changed. I was out of the country for 21 years. During this 21 years, 21% of the population moved from bottom of the pyramid to the lower middle class. Having said that, there are still significant amount of challenges. Yeah. While we are very proud when we look at the list that out of the top 200 richest people in the world, 10 are Indians, but then you look at it from another lens, out of the total poor people, 1/4 are again Indians. Look at it from a lens of consumption. The bottom 50% of the population consumes just 15% of the total consumption. So we are talking about still a society where the average per capita may be $2,000, but it is very skewed. The disparity is massive. If we are not able to lift the people in the country who are at the bottom of the pyramid, there would be a social chaos. The equation where 2/3 of the population lives in rural India, predominantly dependent on agriculture, but the GDP of agriculture contributes just about 16-17% to the national GDP, is not an equation which can sustain. So that's a big challenge. The other, of course, is the environment. You have to be conscious about that. Yeah, today, our per capita greenhouse gas emissions are much lower than the Western world. But we can't have a business model where we have a per capita consumption like the US, it will completely destroy the world. If you're not able to solve a water problem, in another 2 decades, the water supply will be half the demand. So we are facing severe environmental challenges. Why am I raising these issues? What has environment and socio-economic got to do with talent? Because the generation of today is very conscious about being inclusive. They're very conscious about the role that they have to play in making the world a better place, and they would be joining an organization where the purpose is at the heart of it. Today, the people want, when I go to campuses to talk to the students, they don't talk to me about my market cap. They talk to me about what impact I'm having on the society and what are we doing to alleviate the country's problems. So that's where the new generation comes from. So the disruptive forces is going to impact in a subtle way or a more profound way every organization. So you will have to be very conscious about what you do, how it impacts your talent, and the role in society. Remember something, the societal expectations from big business has changed majestically. No longer is the Milton Friedman theory of business is business. It doesn't apply anymore. You are a part of the society and you have to be playing a major part in sorting out and resolving some of the biggest challenges facing the world and the country. Now, when you look at it from the workplace perspective, I think there are certain very key impacts that will have. First is the skill, second is the new generation teams, then it is the new age leadership, the culture, and of course, HR as a function. So let's talk about skills. You know, when you talk about literacy, it is not about the ability to write and read. I think that is passé. Today's literacy is about not only an ability to learn, but about unlearning and relearning. That is what literacy is all about. You know, the people who come to us or who joined us 20, 30 years back, their skills in today's world would be completely redundant unless you have had a very clear focus on reskilling them. If we can move to precision marketing, why can't we have precision skilling? So in HUL today, our focus is on determining the skill needs of an individual and ensuring that we are able to cater to it. It's not the herd mentality that here it is, everyone go through those courses, no longer, because it's no longer relevant. The other important bit is you have to be a student all your life. You can't start with an assumption, I've done my tech education, or I've done my MBA, or I've done my CA, and here I am, ready for life. No, you'll get fossilized very fast if you don't change yourself. Now, we started this reimagining HUL. And reimagining HUL, in fact, Ankush is part of my digital council team, is sitting over here, one of our brightest young managers. And the entire thinking came from, you don't need the entire organization to become change agents. You need a handful of people who could really become the forebearers of change, the catalyst for change, who will lead us into new business models and new thinking. Then you need a big substantive number of people who would be willing to do the kind of experiments we need to do to create the new HUL of the future. And then you have rest of the organization who would embrace the change and help you scale up. Today we have about 85 experiments running in the company, homegrown, and which will reshape HUL in the near future. We believe that in the next 2 years, the HUL of tomorrow will be dramatically different from HUL of, say, 3 years old. Yeah, 3 years back. And because the entire value chain is being looked at from a very different lens. So it's very important for you to identify the change agents that you need to bring in the organization or cultivate in the organization. When we talk about experimentation, we look at it from 3 lenses. First is, what is the unmet need of the consumer or of the organization that we are attempting to solve? The second lens we look at it, is the technology or the process distinctive and hard to replicate? And the third one is, are we appropriating a large part of the value chain? If it meets these three requirements, then that's the sweet spot of innovation, and that's what we drive as Experiment to coming under the banner of reimagining HUL. The other important bit is the new generation teams. Of course, Sanjay talked about the gig. Now, importantly, the ethos of the new age person is very different. First is, you don't come from a perspective that I will be an organization from cradle to grave. I think that expectation also from an organization is no longer valid. What is important is, so long as a person works in the organization, he or she gives the best to the company. That's what you need to do. And our promise to that individual is, we will provide you skills which will keep you employable throughout your life. That's our proposition. And today, when we look at experiments, we don't force it down the throats of people. It starts with the concept of volunteering. Because very importantly, people want to do what is their passion and what gives them joy. So the age where you would put them in a silos, make them work in certain brackets is again gone. Organization of tomorrow is going to be like amoeba. It won't have a defined structure. The biggest challenge for HR will be, how do you have talent attached to value? Gone are the days when you would attach talent based on the size of the business. I think that's a very wrong way to look at talent today. You have to look at it from a perspective in which part of the business there is the biggest potential to create value, and that is where you would be attaching the talent. Now, talent today is not going to function in a classical way. Come at 9 in the morning, go at 5 in the week, at the end of the day. It's complete remote working, it is agile working, it is flexi working, and you have to take that into account, that how would teams perform, what's the kind of culture you need to create in the organization of tomorrow. For us, performance management has always been important, because that's how we get the best out of people. But the performance management in HUL today is very different. First is, you've got flexible goals. It's no longer that you fix a goal at the beginning of the year and it's done. Now, this also stems from a concept that the strategies keep evolving. I still remember the day when we used to make strategies at Unilever, nice binders, send it to London, then forget about it for the next 3 years. Now, that's passé, right? Today, you make a strategy, it might become redundant 3 months hence. So, we keep refreshing our strategies every few months. Together with that, you can't have rigid goals. You can't have rigid targets. So, the age of setting targets at the beginning of the year for the entire year are again gone, because the context changes dramatically. So, goals have to be flexible. You can't be just sitting at the end of the year and giving a feedback. People expect to be given feedback constantly and in real time. And very importantly, people look at it, what's the impact the organization is having on their holistic well-being? Not just from a physical perspective, but from an emotional perspective, from a mental perspective, from a spiritual perspective, how do we impact an individual? The leadership, again, is undergoing a significant shift. Leadership is situational. You have to change your style depending on the context. But obviously, from the days of command and control, of authority, today you are looking at leaders who would be able to inspire you. Leaders who would be able to influence you. Leaders who would be able to nurture you. Leaders who would be able to develop you, who would invest in you. Those are the kind of leaders an organization requires today. no longer power-centric, where data is controlled, information is controlled. With the democratization of information, those days are gone. So the leadership traits have to be very different. As an organization, we have 3 fundamental beliefs. And the beliefs are: company with purpose lasts longer, brands with purpose grow faster, and very importantly, when you look at it from a lens, once you would be looking at it from a lens of company, then you would be looking at it from a brand, and the third most important is people. People with purpose thrive. So we have these 3 fundamental beliefs, and from this belief stems our action that we need to help each and every individual in the company identify their purpose. I think it was Mark Twain who said that there are 2 important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you realize why you were born. Once you get to know what your purpose in life is, then the world opens up over you. Absolutely. Then the passion comes from within. Then the joy of working moves to a new stage altogether. Now that is what we try to do in terms of helping identify people's purpose and helping them live that purpose within the ambit of the organization. The other is, of course, the culture. Culture, like I said, is behavior at scale. It's not just about what you do, but how you do. If you were to ask me to define what is the unique culture of HUL, there are some things which very clearly stand out. First is the purpose. The second is human. We are a very humane organization. We care for our people. We nurture them. We develop them. That is the reason why over decades we have retained our primacy as an employer of choice, as a dream employer. That is the reason why the best don't leave us. But there is also in today's world an aspect of culture which we are bringing in, which is an edge on accountability. We want that owner's mindset. We want that obsession to win, because it's a fast-paced world. It's a quick-faced world. Unless we are able to win in the marketplace, we will not be able to give the kind of careers our people aspire for us. So it's an inclusive world. We don't want people to be left behind. That's the kind of shape and purpose people need. Organization will be like amoeba. So you have to create an organization which anticipates that there will be changes, which anticipates that there will be flux. Not everything you can foresee, but if you are agile, if you're swift, then you can take care of any challenge that is thrown your way. Chinese have got a wonderful word of when they define crisis. It is a challenge and an opportunity. That's how the word crisis gets defined in the Chinese language. So whatever is thrown at you, if you look at it from a lens that there is an opportunity, and if you're an agile and a swift-footed organization, then you can harness it. You can't be together now anymore in a structured organization. When you talk about agility, it's all about chasing value. You keep forming and reforming an organization depending on where the value needs to be created. And everyone needs a purpose. You want to be a part of a movement. But I think there are certain beliefs which are timeless. One is the focus on consumer, and the second is the focus on innovation. If you are an organization and if you're not intimate with your consumer, you will never be able to win. Very often people talk to me about my competitors, and my answer is very simple. I think we look at our competitors much more closely, and many times we know more about them than they know about themselves. But we are not obsessed with our competitors. It's not a zero-sum game. If I grow, that doesn't mean the other can't grow. Or if the other grows, that doesn't mean I can't grow. Your obsession has to be with your consumers. That's what makes a difference. We have to be an organization where people bring the 100% onto the job on what they do. That is when they can give the best to the organization, and the organization can get the best out of them. Now, in this changing context, of course, the HR function will have to evolve. you will have to integrate man and machine. That is going to be some of the most important bit. Yeah, man-machine interface is going to redefine the organization. There are very clear studies which are indicating that yes, and come to think of it, many times people ask me that you're on this advent of robotization, cobotization of your manufacturing processes, it is going to impact livelihood. You can't tell a private enterprise don't be productive, because you're not just competing within the country, you're competing in a global world. So technology, IoTs, 4G, it is going to impact the livelihoods. But more importantly, I'm not much dismayed with technology. Every industrial revolution has created more jobs than before. It will be different jobs. It won't be the same jobs. So you will need to create different skills to make your organization succeed. Yeah. So those were the 5 pillars that I talked about. Now, my last chart is going to be about the skills. Of course, there are certain skills which you will need to enhance. Your business intimacy. At the end of the day, HR will always be a function which will be an interface between people and rest of the company. That is something which can never go away. Yeah. Sanjiv was talking about touch. Yeah, he's absolutely right. It has to be high tech and high touch. Both have to go together. And the more the technology is, more people crave for that human touch. Yeah. It's very interesting, the dichotomy or the paradox you see in the world. On one hand, you are living in a world where everything is digitized. On the other hand, you want to go back to your roots. You want to go back to your culture. Yeah? Why is it that naturals as a phenomena in FMCG industry has galloping at such a feverish pace? At the core of it is the search for authenticity. In a world dominated by digital and data, you are searching for authenticity. So that is something which will never go away. I always tell Anu, she is a CHRO in HUL, that my expectation of a CHRO is they should be able to articulate the HUL's business strategy at an investor meet with the same confidence that a CEO would be doing it. That's the kind of business intimacy an HR person needs to have. They should be having the same understanding of a business process or a brand as a brand manager does. But there are certain skills you will need to imbibe. Yeah? Those are about data science, that's about disruptive thinking, that's about systemic thinking, and you need to be comfortable with technology. We don't expect you to be coders, but we want you to embrace technology, be comfortable with technology. That's what I wanted to share with you.